Audience, welcome to Viewpoint from Overseas. After a break of about, at least on my part, a break of a week or two, here we are again. Today, as usual, is me, Sabahat Ashraf. I write under the name iFaqeer, which you can find on Twitter and Facebook. And Dr. Misbah Azam Sahab, or Misbah Azam Ph.D, I believe is the Twitter handle. For a long time, we have wanted to connect with one of our local thinkers and experts. His name is Dr. Ahmad Faruqui. He is an expert both in the defense analysis field and a trained economist, with a background like a lot of us in Karachi, BA and MA from the esteemed Karachi University, and a PhD on Rashid Minhas scholarship at the University of California, Davis, which is what brought him to us in Northern California, where we are based. So Faruqui Saab has been going around the world advising people and thinking deeply on a lot of issues. The issues we gather here to discuss are often related to Pakistan and that region, but also on a wider level. So Faruqui Saab, first of all, thank you very much for making the time and being available and flexible for us. It is good to have some voices available nowadays because, as we all know, especially in South Asia, voices are becoming rare and they are facing challenges to sort out. So let's start from current affairs. You are seeing what is going on. South Asia is again a flashpoint. There is a foreign relations, there was supposed to be a reset, there was supposed to be some changes and growth, but now what we see is a continuation of the arcs in a lot of those countries. I mean, Pakistan is still going through those cycles of military and pseudo-military control. India is continuing down the path of Jingoist nationalism or Hindutva nationalism, or the word I heard from a thinker from out of Pakistan called Yasir Latif Hamdani is majoritarian politics, and which that brought me to that arc of what connects the era of Nehru and others to the era of first Vajpayee and now Modi. So how do you see all of this? Give us your expert analysis of where we are and what happens next, frankly.
So this term majoritarian politics is new, but the concept is quite old.
Yeah.
India is not the only country that practices it. Actually, Pakistan, you could say, has been practicing it for even a longer time, because it was the majoritarian politics in Pakistan that actually resulted in the breakup of the country in 1971. Actually, it was the opposite of majoritarian. It was minoritarian, you could say, because West Pakistan was the minority. East Pakistan was the majority. 55% lived in the East, 45% in the West. But the West was dominated the national landscape in terms of the bureaucracy, the civil service, the army, all of the institutions of power resided in the West. The two clashed, and there was the spin-off that we are all familiar with. So what has happened since 1971 is basically the power structures have become more aggressive and more dominant. In what is now Pakistan, the domination of the military in politics is the defining feature. Any civilian government that tries to go out of line on defense policy or foreign policy is immediately shown the door. India has not had military coups, not even once in the 72 years that the two countries have been independent. However, India has progressively slid towards an extremist viewpoint that these days is epitomized by Prime Minister Modi and his party trying to recreate sort of a Hindu Raj, if you will, which would replace the British Raj that was there for 200 years. Why is that happening? Well, to a large extent, what you have is the Congress Party was the dominant party in India for many years. And this happens in every country. At some point, people get tired of seeing the same party in power over and over again. And they are accused of everything from corruption to incompetence to being a dynasty. So at some point, it swung the other way, and the BJP came in power. But it was a different BJP then under Vajpayee from what we have now. So unfortunately, the slide has continued, and I think we are seeing this as a global phenomenon, the emergence of populism, cheap popularity, sloganeering, putting the minorities in their place, etc., etc. We're seeing that in Latin America. We're even seeing that in the United States. So what we're seeing in India is unfortunately the progression of democracy in the wrong direction.
So, Misbah, help us out here. Bring us to today. What's happening now? Kashmir, help us tease out the questions on that.
Yeah, actually, it is interesting what Dr. Faruqui just mentioned about this, especially another word we learned, minoritarian politics.
Well, the power structures, right?
The power structure. It is to large extent true. But if you look at the history of that region, So I would raise this question to Dr. Faruqui and ask his view on that. That if you see it, that it was going on and on. I mean, even the democracies in that area. I'm trying to find the right words on that. That they have a somewhat okay. Let's take the example of India. Like there was a BJP, which is the Vajpayee's BJP. But now this is the same BJP, and this is Mr. Modi's BJP, and how much difference is that in that? Like in India also now the military generals start talking to the nation, and so those kind of changes coming all over there. China is already there is no democracy there. So I would put up this question to you, Dr. Faruqui, that how you see the overall region's future because of all these changes coming, that power is kind of getting centralized. It's true. There used to be the the dynastic politics in India. I mean, it has its drawbacks, of course, but the thing is that at least people were accepting that time, and of course other parties, other groups had an opportunity to get inside the power corridors. But now, if you have so much religio/military/political powers, how it is going to end up? Because it will cause all sorts of troubles, wars, and all that. How you see all that, sir?
So there is one dimension here, which is a distinguishing feature of South Asia from China. In China, there's really no religious issue. They eliminated that a long time ago, and whatever religion is there is just fragmentary and scattered and has no political power. You cannot invoke the genie of religion in China to score points. However, in the South Asian subcontinent, in Pakistan and now in India, religion has become a defining feature of politics. And that is a very disruptive and a very dangerous material that should not be introduced in politics. As we look at history, going back centuries, anytime religion and politics were combined, violence was unending. And so India now has a situation where 2 or 3 very worrisome trends are developing. You may have read about McDonald's in India being accused of serving halal meat to all of the customers that come to McDonald's. And many Hindu fundamentalists are saying, this is not acceptable to us. We do not want to eat halal meat. You have to serve us the chatka meat. Now, just imagine, what a ridiculous situation. In many countries like Australia, all the meat that is served like lamb is halal. Nobody's ever raised that as an issue. The same is true in the US. But in India, it has become...
Friends in Delhi actually pointed out that most of the meat served in and around Delhi has been halal for a very long time.
So why suddenly make that an issue? It just tells you that when you invoke the genie of religion, neighbors and friends become enemies, because it's a trivial issue. And you can have all kinds of reasons to kill each other then, that you previously didn't have. So there is that issue. The other issue in India that's very troubling, and then by the way, before I leave that issue of religion, that has been there in Pakistan for a long time. I mean, it's just sad to see the same snake, if you will, raise its head now in India. The same snake which was there in Pakistan, Ahmadis, Shia, Sunni, there are all kinds of religious subdivisions. Which mosque will you go to? What kind of hands do you hold during the prayer? I mean, those issues have been causing annoyance in Pakistan for decades. Well, we are now seeing in India this divide between Hindus and Muslims suddenly becoming the issue. So that's one problem. The second problem, which is, I think, very surprising. So India has a very long-standing tradition of a free press. You can write whatever you want to, you can say whatever you want to, whether it's Congress or BJP or independent. Well, now it is becoming clear that if you say anything opposing the Modi government, you're going to be vilified extremely on social media, and possibly a clampdown would occur even at the governmental level. That's sort of a new development. Freedom of press in India is being challenged. And thirdly comes the Kashmir issue. The Kashmir issue is, I hope, not a permanent issue in the sense of what I'm about to say. What they have done in Delhi is dissolve the Kashmir Parliament, the state assembly, got rid of the chief minister, imposed central rule, and not only that, but imposed a curfew that is equivalent to putting that state under martial law without calling it martial law. Of course, they have already had hundreds of thousands of troops and paramilitary troops there. So you can see de facto it had been under a siege-like situation since 1989, when that local insurgency began. The way they revoke Article 370 unilaterally, without even consulting with the Kashmiris, has sent shockwaves throughout the rest of India, the minority states, the minority religions. So this is unprecedented in a democracy like India, to have such sweeping centralization of power. And that's, I hate to say it, but they're acting like Pakistan now. And somebody put it this way, they said, so India will emerge as a Hindu Pakistan to counter the Muslim Pakistan that is there. So in a sense, the religious genie is going to destroy the two countries as civilized democracies that we want them to be. I hope that will change. But unfortunately, the religious genie is very hard to control. Once it comes out, it is impossible to put back. It's like Pandora's box. And Modi is playing to the gallery by opening that Pandora's box.
So, by means of a segue, let us come to that last point where you said he's using this, he's playing to the gallery. Is he trying to what is he trying to distract from? And this is kind of my ham-handed way of bringing you onto the economic issue. Both for India and for Pakistan, both countries seem to be having some trouble in the economic domain. And there seems to be almost a global, we're starting to hear rumblings about a global recession coming. What are your thoughts on that? And then bring us specifically to Pakistan about what do you think of the performance of the Imran Khan government so far, and where are we now?
Well, so there are several layers in that question.
Yeah.
There's certainly a global recession that is being talked about. And you know the best definition of a recession, I read the other day in the Wall Street Journal, is when the economists observe a slowing down of the growth rate, then they say a recession has occurred. There is no way to predict it. You only predict it after it has happened. And unfortunately, economics has been compared to driving a car by looking in the rear view mirror. Economics economics cannot be like physics. It cannot predict easily, is what I'm saying. Actually, Einstein, you may recall, in one of his letters, said that he wanted to study economics, and that was the first class he did enroll in. But it was so difficult he gave up. It was too hard. And that's still the case. An economy has so many moving parts in it that you can't easily forecast or predict. But yes, there is a consensus that a global slowdown is probably happening. And why would India and Pakistan be any different? So that's one issue. The second issue, though, is Modi's policies have failed to produce the results that he had promised they would produce. Their growth rate has really come down. A lot of the talk that he had, big promises, populistic kind of rhetoric, has not materialized. So some people are saying that this Kashmir issue is a good diversion for him. Nothing works like patriotic fervor and nationalism to divert attention. Is he doing that? I don't know. I think it's too soon to say whether that is the only motivation for his taking this hardline position towards Kashmir and Pakistan. It could be that that's really an ideological issue, has nothing to do with economics, but it could be that it is both. But I think it's too early to come to a conclusion on that from the Indian side. Coming to Pakistan, well, as we were discussing a few minutes ago, huge promises were made by this new government when it came to power on the 18th of August 2018. 1 year has come and gone, and any objective comparison of the goals they set out versus the achievements would suggest that they should get not just a C grade, but an F grade in their report card on what they have delivered compared to what they said they would do. Growth rate is cut in half. Unemployment is pretty bad. Inflation is rising. The currency is falling. Foreign debt is rising. They just took $16 billion of new debt in 1 year after promising to reduce the debt. They have raised it. They said they would not go to the IMF. They have gone to the IMF. They have gone to Saudi Arabia. They have gone to the UAE. What are they trying to increase the exports of? They want to sell the JF-17 fighter. How many have they sold? Maybe 3 to Burma and maybe shown 3 to Nigeria. Even if they sell 300 of those fighters, it will make no difference to the balance of payments. It's a distraction. But unfortunately, the public is very gullible. The public is excited that we have this brand new fighter that on the March 23rd parade can do all kinds of routes and maneuvers. The Paris Air Show is one of a kind. So what you have is, what's being practiced is a huge distraction game to show achievements where there are none.
So, sir, but if I may just ask you to recalibrate that report card. You said we give them an F compared to what they promised. But what about what is possible? How do they compare to what you think might have been possible in a best case or a different government?
And I also add to this question that as far as Kashmir, what options Pakistan has now?
Okay, sir. Double-barreled question here.
Which one should I take first? Let me take the Kashmir one first.
Okay.
It's an easier question.
Oh boy, when Kashmir is easier than the economy, then we know the...
Kashmir is easier than the economy. Honestly, it requires the right mindset. It requires a mature philosophical point of view. There is no military solution to Kashmir. There's absolutely no military solution, because if there was, then in 72 years, we would have gotten Kashmir by our forces. We tried in the 47, 48, we tried in the 65, we tried in 99. We cannot get the Indian Kashmir. Accept it as being India's portion. Yes, if they violate human rights, if they violate civil rights, raise it at the UN. Let the whole world talk about it. It's like the Palestinian issue. There is no military solution to the Palestinian issue either. So, on Kashmir, take a deep breath, let it out. That's my advice to the people in Islamabad. Think about your own people. You have 208 million people. Kashmir is 8 million Indian folks currently, right? So that 8 million, if you compare to the population of the subcontinent, which is 1.5 billion, is about 1 or 2%. Why should we let that 1 or 2% determine the fate and the future of the 1.5 billion people? I mean, that requires mature thinking, but honestly, it's not very deep thinking. It's pretty obvious. everyone in the globe is telling Pakistan to do exactly what I just mentioned, including many Pakistani writers, scholars, and academics, but the army won't let go. So the solution is easy, the will to implement it is not there. And it sort of feeds on itself. And we can come back to that in a moment. Let's go to the economy.
Yes, sir.
We have to be realistic when it comes to turning the economy around.
Right.
We can't solve all the problems in 12 months. The problem Mr. Imran Khan created was making very lofty promises, like 10 million new homes, 5 million new trees. You know, the list was endless. A mega dam based on crowdsourcing. I mean, all of these are grandiose promises. This is where the politicians' rhetoric should be separated from reality.
So let's come to the reality. Let's talk about the reality. What is really possible and how are they doing with that?
They have not even touched the defense spending, which is such a huge strain on the budget. They were talking about cutting it, they were talking about managing it, but they're doing nothing there. It's a humongous share of the problem is the defense budget. Okay? So unless you touch it, you can't solve the economic problem. But it's regarded as the sacred cow. They will not touch it. Okay? So let's leave it aside for a moment.
Yeah.
Let's look at what is our comparative advantage when it comes to exports and imports. Who are we competing with? What are we producing? Are we producing the right kinds of products or are we not producing them? Are we producing the right kinds of services? Why are we not doing it? There needs to be a diagnostic analysis. And Razak Dawood, of all the people they have, should have a very good sense of what's feasible and what's not feasible. But he's just going along for the ride. I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric. I haven't seen any fundamental changes. They need to raise taxes, but politically it's very difficult to do, so they're really not doing much there. And obviously, why would you want to pay more taxes if you have been paying less taxes? It's a political challenge. The only way you can raise tax revenue is by raising the growth rate of the economy. The other option is raise taxes. But if you raise taxes, you risk a political revolt. And plus, if you really raise taxes hard, then you can have an economic slump take place too. So the secret is make the economy grow. And they haven't figured out how to make the economy grow. It went from 5% to 2.5%. Pakistan's economy, if you look at the historical data for the last 72 years, at various times has grown at 10%, 11%, 9%, 8%. The capacity is there, they're just not even close to it. So they have to analyze why that is the case. So Dr. Hafiz Pasha is one of the best economists in Pakistan. He has a lot to say on the topic of what needs to be done to make the economy grow faster. But he has been sidelined, and they need to listen to people like him and bring them in the loop. I mean, that's the short answer.
Okay, so Misbah Azam, any concluding thoughts on this or questions?
Yeah, actually, he just mentioned Dr. Hafiz Pasha, and I really agree with him. Dr. Hafiz Pasha had a very good book about Pakistan's economy, and I think a lot of people should read that. And besides that, nowadays, just recently, I did mention to Dr. Faruqui some time ago regarding there is a show. He appeared with Mr. Arif Nizami, and he kind of gave a very interesting thoughts about how things are moving. One interesting thing he said, and before you came today, I was discussing with Dr. Faruqi, same thing. I was asking his point of view in that. He said that the balance of payment is the issue. Okay, government say current account deficit is reducing. Okay, fine, it is very good. In his word, it is a good sign. However, the financial account deficit is growing. He say that the balance of payments are considered good when these both things have a surplus in that. But if one is going down, it's good thing, but other one is going up, it means that reduction in the current account deficit is not due to the financial account surplus. It is due to the reducing the import. When you reduce the import, it affects your large scale manufacturing. Car sale is dropping, and 9 different areas. So That is one interesting part. I would just like, if you have some time, I would like.
I think we have a few minutes more.
If Dr. Faruqui say something on this point.
How do you grade the economic understanding of our Dr. Sabahat Ashraf?
Well, so there is a balance of payments and there is the balance on current account. The balance on current account is basically exports minus imports.
Right.
But it doesn't look bigger picture. There is more to the balance of payments than just the current accounts. And it has to do with the amount of debt you have, the amount of loans you have. That's the balance of payments. Debt servicing comes into that picture as well. So we have to look at the bigger picture and not just at the micro picture. That's basically Dr. Pasha's viewpoint. And I think the budget deficit is also something to be looked at. So that's different from the deficit on your export-import account. It's your government spending minus your government revenue. That is looking pretty bad for Pakistan. They have to cut back on the government spending. How much of that is productive? How much of that is unproductive? They need to do a thorough diagnostic analysis of that. So what I would suggest we do is perhaps in a future program do a deeper dive just on the economy issue.
Right.
See what are the challenges? Can they be overcome? Which I believe they can. But realistically, what are the policies to follow to improve things, and how long will it take to get there? I mean, at this point, it's not going to happen in the next 12 months. We'll be lucky if it happens in the next 4 years, which is the remaining tenure of this government. So I think we have to be realistic in our goals. This government fell on its face by setting the goals so high that not even the most efficient government in the globe could possibly achieve them. So you have to manage people's expectations. They created unrealistic expectations. And if I were in the PTI government's shoes, I would be concerned what will happen in the next 2 years, because they could be thrown out of office. If unemployment rises, if inflation continues to be what it is, if economic growth slumps, you will have riots, you will have a revolt, and that's when a coup becomes likely. So one of the articles I wrote a few months ago was what are the odds of a coup in Pakistan? And it really depends on how this government performs. If it really doesn't do much in the next 2 years, they will not be around for the 5-year term. They will be replaced. And Pakistan has no shortage of the military replacing governments. They don't have to have a coup explicitly. So today's hero is Imran Khan. Who knows, tomorrow's heroes could be somebody totally different.
Right. So, audience, you heard Dr. Faruqi's prescriptions. One is to do some really deep thinking, and more importantly, to manage perceptions, which in politics and life is an important part. And I think, Faruqi Sahab, thank you very much for your time. And I think I kind of heard a promise for at least a couple of other things you want to discuss with us at some point.
I'd be more than happy to, yes, absolutely. And I enjoyed being on the program. This was quite nice of you to invite me.
Thank you, sir. So, audience, until next week, next time you see us, you can please follow us and find us on our Facebook page, which is Talk for Pak, and our YouTube channel, which you can find by looking for either Wide Angle Zoom or one of our shows, our Urdu show and our English. So, Azad Labon ke saath we want to. Until next time, Allah Nigaban.